Good morning. Welcome to the show. We wanted to start this podcast off by kind of introducing each other so everybody can kind of get to know who we are. So I'll go first.
Like, who the hell are these women?
Right.
These squawking bitches.
Right, which we are trying to figure out actively. So just bear with us. So I'm going to introduce Sarah.
Nice.
Who is my most bestest friend. Mm-hmm. And she is one of the most capable people I've ever met in my entire life. And I have witnessed this woman in so many different life scenarios, and every single one she shows me this incredible power of perseverance and like showing up and like fucking amazing. One of my biggest inspirations. And she is passionate about teaching people to become entrepreneurs, and you teach people how to quit their 9-to-5s doing copywriting. And it's like, I love like seeing this dream realized, because I remember like before you started doing Write Your Way to Freedom and all that stuff, you had this whole beautiful idea of like bringing more entrepreneurs into the world, and how do I get high schoolers to be thinking this way and all that stuff. And I just love how it's like being realized in your work, like every day, like your passions. All right. What else do I know about you? I know that
I still want to like go into high schools. I want to like get them younger.
I think that makes like a ton of sense. And I feel like there's a very real possibility it like grows into that.
I don't know how that looks, but like high school programs, I've always thought that like once my kids are like in school and stuff, I would like have more clarity around that.
That might make sense. Kind of go with that like flow of your kids going through it. And like, because then you might even be able to be like, how do you start teaching children from a young age to be thinking outside of the box? Like instead of just this institutionalized education that we kind of like pump our children through to like work a 9-to-5 job, we set them up for it. And so it's like, how do you disrupt that whole idea from an early age?
Like I remember actually there was a in my co-working office, sorry, side tangent, but when I first moved to LA in my first co-working space, there was an after-school program, I think through like the Girl Scouts. And it was a like women in entrepreneurship program. And there were all these like middle schoolers talking about like businesses they'd create. And I just sat like in the, like I was like trying to work, but also like watch them. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what I want.
I love that.
Love to do things like that. Eventually.
Yeah. I think that makes like so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else do I know about you? I know that Sarah is engaged to Benjamin, and they are phenomenal together. Like, I just love seeing your relationship unfold this whole time. I also love how hard you tried not to fall in love with this guy. Just such a Sarah thing.
I always think of the like meme of the like Muppet like with the ugly face sliding down the slide. He's like, no, because you sent that to me like while it was happening. You're like, this is you resisting falling in love with this guy, and it's like not working.
It's not working. Like you just kicked and screamed the whole time.
I did.
I loved it so much. And now you're engaged, and you just recently bought this gorgeous home that we're recording in, and we have been going wedding dress shopping.
Yeah,
which has been really fun. And what I know is I love creating things with you.
Yeah.
I love how you embody this very can-do, practical, like these are the steps you get shit done. Like, let's just make it happen. And really just you, I don't know if I've ever really seen you outwardly be like actually like intimidated about something. I think like everything you approach, you're like, either I'm going to figure this out or I'm going to fly to a different country.
That is the move.
It is one or the other.
That is the move. I know. I just told Ben recently, I was like, during this very difficult, like intense time, I haven't looked up going to another country once. That means I love you.
This is important. Yes.
Because that's a tendency to just like move around for sure.
So a few weeks ago, I think it was Lila. We were like talking about
your daughter,
for some reason. Lila, my 7-year-old. She asked me, she goes, well, Mom, what is Sarah's favorite color? And I was like, I think I was saying like it might be like a rosy color, but I don't know. Maybe it's like more of a burgundy. And I didn't really like know. And she was like, Mom, that's like literally this is what Lila said. She's like, Mom, Sarah's your best friend, and this should have been the first thing you learned about her.
Oh my God, I love her.
And so now officially on record, I need to know, Sarah.
You don't know my favorite color?
I need to know your favorite color for sure, once and for all.
It's blue.
Just what blue?
Wait, I haven't told you this. Well, it's all blues, but do you know why?
No, I need to.
Oh, this is kind of funny. I think you're going to think this is funny, actually. So blue is my favorite color because when I was little, there wasn't blue like anything. Blue was always the last color to appear in like M&Ms and like Fruity Pebbles, and like blue was like, and so I always felt blue was left out.
This rare, like,
and so I felt bad for the color blue.
Hello, Enneagram 2. I will care for the color blue single-handedly.
So I was like, blue is my favorite color because blue doesn't get the recognition it deserves.
Oh my gosh.
Why am I crying? I'm like laugh crying because I'm like, that's so ridiculous. But that's literally why it's my favorite color. I felt bad for the color blue as a child. And so I was like, I will care for you, blue.
This is an interesting thing that I have observed in you is like how you assign inanimate things, deep, emotionally complex, like
yeah, they're alive. Everything's alive.
And they're experiencing something and they actually need you like to like help. Like the color blue needed little Sarah to like champion.
To care. Yes.
Yeah. And now look at blue.
Now look at blue. Blue's everywhere.
All over the place.
I remember vividly when the blue M&M came out. I was like, this is important.
Yeah. This is a landmark moment.
Yes.
And
I was like, see, blue, you did it.
Yeah.
Now you can go out into the world and you don't need me.
Fly free, blue.
Fly free, blue. I can't believe I've never told you that story.
Now I know. Lila's going to be so happy to know that too. Now, are we officially best friends now?
Yes, now we are best friends.
Right.
I love that she said that, though. That's so true. Like, when you're a kid, that is one of the things that you ask
your
people.
Your favorite animal, your favorite color.
Yes, and then we become old and boring, and we're like, what do you do for work?
I know. What if, like, when you met people, you were just like, hi, my name's Emily. What's your favorite mythical creature?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. I'm going to start doing that. What's your favorite color? What's your lucky number?
Yes.
People have a lucky number almost always if you ask them.
Yep.
What's your favorite animal? Mm-hmm. These are the questions that we need to bring back.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Food? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Because then when they say Rocky Road, you know you can't be friends.
Can't trust. Or okay, I know this is going to divide our audience like on an early like
we like already lost
timeline.
People.
I cannot wrap my head around mint chocolate chip people.
Oh, I love mint chocolate chips.
I know you're one of those people because I have seen you eat Listerine strips in a cereal bowl with a spoon.
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't, but that's what it feels like to me.
They horrify you, the Listerine strips. You're always like, no, I'm not a maniac. Get those out of my face.
Yeah, you always offer them to me.
Reaction.
And I'm like, get that away from me.
And now when I eat them, I like giggle to myself because I'm like, Emily would hate this.
I know. And then you like exhale and it like burns my like eyeballs. I was just
it is true with the mask. Yeah. If you eat a Listerine strip with a mask on, it like shoots up the side, the vent and like
tear ducts.
And like assaults your eyes. Which in a weird way I kind of like. I'm sure you're not surprised.
You're like, this is doing it for me. This is really the whole mask Listerine strip combo. Have you ever seen that meme where it's like a chocolate chip cookie that somebody's dunking in a thing of Vicks Vapor Rub?
No, gross. That actually made my stomach lurch. That's disgusting.
Now you know how I feel.
Wait, that is a thing?
Oh, no, that's how I feel about mint chocolate chip.
Wait, but that's
ice cream.
That's a meme?
It's a meme.
Where people are doing that are they making fun of mint chocolate chip?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I could see that. I actually feel like you could ruin mint chocolate chip ice cream if you kept like going down this route. So let's change subjects.
All right.
I'm going to introduce you unless you're done. Unless you're not done.
Maybe I'll cycle back and have more to say, but.
Okay. So Emily. Emily is like, I joke that I don't know what my life was like before you because I can't really remember it. I blocked it all out. It's a dark period.
It was the dark ages.
It's like before Emily and after Emily is like how my life is divided now. You are just one of the most insightful emotionally intelligent people I've ever met. I love to like, that's always how I describe you, is just, you have showed me and are showing me just the importance of a lot of aspects of like innate intelligence and wisdom and like connecting to the body and really like learning to trust my own self, really. And as somebody who kind of grew up pushing away and like shunning that as like being valuable information and really kind of wanting to live in the rational science-based world. I mean, like I chased science because I just saw like people who were emotional as like weak.
Right.
And you have just shown me like the strength and the wisdom that like comes from all of that. Like I just feel like I was missing half of the world before I met you. Yeah. So you're like one of the wisest people I've ever met, really. And in a space that was just not somewhere I was even interested in exploring. So I think it's really fun actually, because we definitely contrast each other in this way. Like you'll be talking about past lives and I'll be like, okay.
I'll be talking about all sorts of stuff.
You'll be like, listen, I was just reading this book about past lives. You've got to read it. I'm like, I'm probably not going to read it, but I want to hear what you've got to say about it.
I'm planting the seed will cycle back in like a year.
Yeah, you're like, okay. I'm just going to keep working on this. But the thing is in the same like breath, I will explain how I don't necessarily like see eye to eye or agree with you in that like realm sometimes. But I have seen the way my life has become more like rich and being more open to the things that you've introduced me to and the ways that you've like asked me questions and just get me to think differently. So I would describe you as very, like we joke that like I'm more on the ground than you. You're kind of like this ethereal, like floating like in the clouds. And like sometimes you'll be describing things and I'm like, what? Or I'll be like, give me some like words to describe master your mindset.
Oh my gosh.
You'll start talking. I'm like, Emily, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but like the world is going to be like, what? Because it's like you describing like, I don't know, another dimension or something.
You're like, we're not writing like poetry, like psilocybin poetry here. Okay. Like we're trying to describe something like concrete.
Exactly. I'm like, cool. In fewer words.
I know. Anytime you ask for those, I'm like, I give you a bunch of stuff and you're like, okay, no, that doesn't work. I'll take it from here. It's true. And that's how it's funny. Like the whole head in the clouds thing. Like that's how I was when I was a kid. Like same deal, getting lost all the time. Like really daydreaming.
I just like, we were like walking through the parking garage after wedding dress shopping. And I just like didn't even like try to help you. I just was like looking at you and like laughing because you were like, where are we?
What is happening?
Like trying to find the car. I was like,
lost.
This is just so you.
I'd gotten so lost.
I feel like it was like you were talking about finding the car, but really you could have been just talking about life. Like
I think it was a metaphor for sure. Absolutely.
Where are we? What is happening?
What is actually happening? What floor am I on? I think I got off on the wrong floor.
Oh, it was so cute. Yeah. And so I don't know. I don't even know. I feel like describing you is like describing like a cloud or something that's like you can't quite like like touch or something.
Yeah.
And I also joke that I have like a secret, not so secret life mission to just like get you into the world more, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast because I love creating with you. I love what comes of it and how it ends up being kind of a vessel for like deeper growth for us as well. And so, I don't know. I just adore you. I'm sure more will like come out, but you're also a really like wonderful mother. And that is something that I never really I say this too all the time to people when I'm like talking about you. I'm like, I like never wanted children until I like met you. And that like changed for me because I was like, whoa, the way you like mother your girls is just different than what I've like witnessed. So that's like really important because like now I want to have kids and I like totally like that was like a shift that came through our friendship.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to cry now.
Okay. You want a tissue?
No.
I know. I do feel like when I think about our friendship, and anytime like I describe our friendship, or even like we post something on Instagram or something like that, there's always this feedback that I get from people just like, I want a friendship like that. Like, and always my like reaction is like, I didn't know that this was possible.
Same.
Like,
I didn't know it was possible either.
I didn't grow up having like really, I mean, I had female friendships, but I didn't have like this level of friendship with anybody. And I remember I would always say like, your presence in my life and my friendship with you, for me, it makes me feel like the universe is like for me and not against me, right?
Which is important for you.
Yeah.
That's an important thing for you.
That I'm not like contending against reality, but like it's being cultivated for me and to experience. And like your friendship has been for me such an incredible like grounding tool as I like naturally float off into space.
I think that's like our like logo is like, I need to be on the ground and you are like holding a bunch of balloons and I'm like grabbing you by the ankle and I'm like pulling you back to earth and you're like, no, come with me, it's much more magical in the sky. And I'm like, cool, but like also let's do some things on earth.
But that's what we do. Yeah. Because like you are like, you can do stuff down here. Like you can come down here. It feels really good sometimes, like be in your body and like look at all these practical things you can figure out and like how you can have an impact. And then vice versa. I'm like, and up here, look at these big like philosophical ideas and how it can like enrich your like experience of life and like that.
And you're like, I don't want to eat food because then I can't float away. And I'm like, eat. I'm like, have some chicken.
Eat pork belly.
I'm like, eat this bacon. What are you doing? You haven't eaten. You're like, I have a banana. And I'm like, that's not enough food for the day.
That doesn't work. I know. I love it. We kind of balance each other out in that way. Like a different perspective for each other. And I think that's part of why creating with you is so fucking fun.
Because it's like that contrast.
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we should touch on the fact that we've had a podcast before.
Right.
So we've done this.
We've been here before.
Yeah, we've been here before.
As cool and comfortable as we are coming across right now.
As natural as this seems.
Came out of a lot of hard work. Our first podcast.
It was pretty cute.
It was real cute.
How long ago was that? Like 5 years ago?
Had to be at least.
6?
Maybe 6. Yeah.
Well, and that one was like very much focused on like just like sexuality and I mean anything in that realm, like intimacy, sexuality.
And we were very much like of like the female, like it was very like empowering towards women, you know, and ourselves and like reclaiming your sexuality as a woman. And because it was very much like we were both kind of like workshopping that idea in our own lives, you know?
Because we both, I think, came from a place where it was very much like a source of shame.
Right.
There was a lot of like guilt and shame and all of that like wrapped up in that. So I was kind of like pushing back against that.
Right.
I think that's also like kind of when I started pole dancing.
That is in that same window.
When we were podcasting. And then that was funny because we were like, oh, we'll just record this and put this out to the internet and no one will listen to it. And then like pretty quickly, people started listening to it.
Like I freaked out.
Yeah. And you were like, no.
I was like, wait.
You were like, wait, people are actually listening. I mean, it was called The Sex Talk. So I'm sure like people scrolling through like lists of podcasts were like, what's this? You know, that's a pretty like provocative.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe we'll loop back and do some.
I mean, I'm sure it will come out because I think it's an important part of both of our like journeys.
It was just so fun to like figure that whole thing out with you and like figure out how to like talk well with somebody, like, you know, and especially in like a podcast setting and in workshopping our ideas and stuff was so much fun. And then we graduated into and then we did Master Your Mindset. Yeah. Which I really saw like the benefit of practicing that and then even everything that you learned from doing Write Your Way to Freedom. Yeah. And I remember you gave me so much good advice around how to communicate well, clearly, like how to even like speak and create like that.
Yeah, no, I mean,
interaction.
It was like I learned so much through that time just in like getting information into people's hands and it actually having an impact through creating Write Your Way to Freedom. Master Your Mindset is obviously a little bit more difficult because you're like, your brain. Fix your brain.
Fix your brain.
Hate your life less. That should be our tagline.
Fix your brain. Hate your life less.
Hate your life less. Sign up for Master Your Mindset. No, but I mean, because Your Way to Freedom is obviously a little bit easier because you're like, this is going to help you earn more money. And then when I was creating that, I've told this story many times before, but when I was creating that, I was just like the course itself was just about becoming a copywriter. And as I was about to like release it to the public, I was like, this is missing the most important work for me, which was like mindset work. And so I like backtracked and like put 2 like little lessons in there about like mindset. And then it just became the thing that I always heard people talking about, like having the most impact on them. Because you can start your own business, but if you're not like addressing your own like thought patterns and stuff, you can just make yourself miserable basically. Right. And so so through all of that, I was like, I mean, so much of the mindset lessons in Write Your Way to Freedom came from like our friendship and our conversations and then just creating Master Your Mindset was like the obvious next step for us. Yeah. And I'd love to add to it too.
Yeah.
Which we will, I'm sure.
And I think like, I don't know, it provided such like a platform, I think, for us to, it was so powerful to collect in our experience, like the things that were the most impactful, like life lessons and tools that we've ever assembled, you know?
Yeah, totally. And that was also interesting because so many of these things, especially like when you talk about mindset work and stuff like that, so many of these things feel so intangible and like abstract.
Right.
And so to like have to really like almost like systemize what we do.
Yeah.
Because that's what the process of creating Master Your Mindset was we were like, okay, this is kind of what we do. How do we like make that like a process for someone?
Pieces. Yeah.
And like define things that we didn't really, some of the things like we hadn't like defined or created a word for until we created Master Your Mindset, which was awesome because it made our way of like communicating about just like things in life. And also for me, creating Master Your Mindset made so many of the concepts so much more like concrete that I was able to like put them in place better.
Yeah.
And it created like a vocabulary even for just like communicating with Ben.
Right. It did. It was like really defining because I think, and I think to go back like to how our relationship functions, that's like was a really good example of a creative process that we can really embody, like taking these concepts that are up here in the clouds and like bringing them down into this
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, this very practical step-by-step thing that we've gotten such amazing feedback from people. Yeah,
that was something that I was really excited because I was excited for you to see the feedback that I knew would come.
Right.
Because that's the thing about, and this is why I'm like such a big believer in like create everyone create, put it out there. Because until you like start getting that feedback from people, it is just like an abstract idea. And you're the only one who is like the supporter and the criticizer of it.
Right.
And so I don't know. I just feel like we all have a lot of us have the tendency to kind of put that stuff down, like our own creations, our own ideas. It's like we protect it because we're afraid of like negative feedback. But in my experience, when you put that stuff out there, you actually find like your tribe. You find your people, they gravitate towards you, and then you get feedback, you know, in the initial like Write Your Way to Freedom or whatever, I got feedback from people where they're like, this, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
You know? So having that information to be like, okay, I need to like really like dig in here and clarify here. It just makes you better at solidifying and your own ideas and concepts. Yeah. It's like, I don't know. It's just like a beautiful interaction that I've really come to love. I love hearing from people what they like pulled from Master Your Mindset and what they resonate with.
And we've talked about how sometimes it's so surprising.
Yeah. Oh,
like people being so affected by something that maybe was like an absolute afterthought for us, which is another like just like affirms this whole idea of create, like put it out there. Like it might be something that you place very little value on that could be life-changing for somebody else.
Totally. I mean, the amount of like people who have emailed me and said like, oh my gosh, Emily said this like one thing or told this one story. I mean, you're like, oh, maybe there's something more. And like, let's dig into that thing. Let's talk about that story a little bit with a little bit more like detail. And for me, the end result is always like better realizations for myself and also like creating more value for the people who are like engaging with whatever it is I'm creating.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. And I just want to shake all the like artists and creatives. I'm like,
just do it.
Just do it.
It reminds me of, and I feel like I've told this story to you, but there's this whole analogy of the pottery teacher who split his class into two parts. And for the entire semester, one half of the class was working on one pot, was going to use the entire semester to perfect one pot. And the rest of the class had to make a pot like every class. And then they were going to compare the pots at the end of the semester. And the people who had the most beautiful pots were the ones that made a pot every day, even though it only took them a day to make this pot and it took these people 3 months. And the whole idea of just show up and do it.
Yeah.
And by doing that and by putting it out there, getting feedback, seeing what resonates, what doesn't. And then those things are asking you to dig in more deeper and have more clarity about your own understanding of these things, whether creatively or like more functionally or whatever. And it's just the act of doing it is like as important as like the thing itself.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, that's the thing with like writing. It's a big thing with writing. And that's why, you know, people ask me like, how do you deal with writer's block? And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't say that writer's block exists. Like I stopped giving it power by being like, there's a thing called writer's block.
And it's a limiting belief and I have it.
It is a limiting belief. Yeah. It's like, so then what I do is I'm like, okay, instead of writer's block, there are days of like lower inspiration is what I call it.
Okay.
Days where flow comes more easily and days where it just doesn't. And like, I think that is natural and normal. And I just don't give it power and call it writer's block, which I think is like step one, super important. Then it's all about just, you know, when you make the commitment to like show up and try and like work and do and do the thing that you're trying to do, I really believe that if you show up on the days where you don't feel like it and still do the thing, even if what comes out is like garbage, you become a better, stronger writer, creative, whatever, because you're just saying, and also I think it's like really important. This is where you've influenced me to like communicate to the universe. Like I'm here and I'm doing the work and I'm showing up regardless of like how I feel.
Yeah.
And this is not to like cross into the world of like being productive when you like need to like actually focus on yourself. It's not, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just being committed to like showing up and consistently like doing the thing. I think it's one of the things that holds people back the most is they think they need to wait around till they feel like it. It's like, it's tied to the idea of waiting until you find your passion to like take action. Right. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Cause I didn't find my like quote unquote passion or like the things that light me up the most until I started taking action consistently. And I just really want to push back on that because I think our generation, which was super lucky, we were the first generation, I think, where parents were coming from a little bit like they still definitely struggle with scarcity, but they were a little bit more in the world of in an abundant world where they could look at their children and say like, follow your passion.
Right.
But I just see how it's created like such an existential crisis for so many people our age.
Mom?
Like what? I can do anything. It's like it's definitely like a luxury to have that like problem. But for me, I just think that it's like screwed up. It's just like held so many people back because they think like, oh, I'm supposed to like know what I should be doing. Yeah. And I was never one of those people. And so I don't know. Some people do know. And I've always been like, fuck you.
Fuck you.
From the most loving place. But like, give me some of that. Like, it's always like, it's just been a mind fuck for me.
Right. I wonder, like, that's so interesting to think about because you're so right in that past generations, like, the focus has been very much you're going to go to college and graduate and work the same job that you have a commitment to for 40 years and really like establish yourself concretely in the security of this one thing, right? Which was very important, like extremely important, like phase, I guess,
it was
to
the
like
next
go
step
through.
Of progress,
right?
For us as like a society, a world,
right?
And then there's some people that like are still craving that, like would be
Absolutely.
grateful for that
Yes.
step. Yeah.
Yes. And so then there's almost this idea as we've segued into what are you passionate about? Like what brings you actual deep satisfaction to engage in your life? But it's like, are we applying some of the same belief systems around the concreteness of that? And like having to know what it is, know what your degree is, like know what kind of job you want to work and applying those same ideas to like passions and to things that will constantly be morphing and changing. And I think like your whole idea is just show up. Like they'll like meet you.
They will meet you.
You'll have that clarity. And then the truth is like even what we were talking about earlier, like how someday maybe your thing morphs into teaching children or teaching young kids like how to do and how it's going to grow and change as you grow and change.
And obviously that's a huge reason as to why I'm like entrepreneurship, because you can like shift.
You're allowed to.
Yeah, you're allowed. You're like, there's more flexibility to shift your focus. I will say in all of this, it's something that I've been thinking about because you know how like we all millennials and Gen Z kind of have the reputation of like following their passion and therefore they like don't like doing anything that's slightly uncomfortable. I actually do think that like that is something from like our parents' generation worth like bringing back in. Like just the idea of like it's not always supposed to like feel great.
Push yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
and if you don't like increase your resilience and your ability to like push through discomfort and tough times and like difficult problem solving, if you're just taking like the easy path, I think it's going to take a lot longer or be less likely that you'll actually like find something really meaningful. Because I feel like the other thing is some of the most meaningful things in our lives come from struggles. And I just think that I don't know. I think there's going to be like a swing back and people are like like, I don't know, people love to like make fun of Gen Z for like this thing.
Yeah.
And I actually like love Gen Z because I'm like, yeah, push back. Like, you know, do things that feel more right, but also like work hard.
Is that a t-shirt?
Yeah. Do things that feel right, but also work hard. I don't even know where I'm going with that, except for that I think that we need a little bit of a shift. And I hope that anyone, because your story also so inspires me and the things that you've done to like earn money, I guess, you know, like when one of my favorite stories about you is your like your slime business.
My slime business.
I like, it's like one of the stories when I'm trying to explain like who you are. Your slime business is one of them. And the way I tell it is, I'm like, okay, so she is like so creative. And so I'm like, she just can like make things wonderful. For example, one time she called me and was like, I think I'm going to start a slime business. And I was like, what?
Wait, first, what is slime?
What is slime? You tell me, because I don't know that I can answer that.
Slime, like there was like that whole slime phenomenon that happened in like 2019 or
but
2018.
I just got to say I was completely unaware of it. Like,
right. And I don't know why I was aware of it, to be honest.
Because you have kids.
Maybe it was, my kids, because it was very much like a kid thing. And it just when these kids would make slime out of like glue and like make colors in it and all like sparkles and glitter. And then they started selling it. And I was realizing that there was like a total opportunity to create an actual reliable little business so that all the parents, like I was mostly thinking like all these parents and grandparents are just wanting to buy slime for their kids.
And not having to create it.
Yeah, not having them have to make it and also not having to like buy from like some Etsy shop or whatever. Not that that was bad at all, but just making it kind of easy. And the thing that was funny about that whole thing is I was just like coping with the death of my mother. That's like where that business came out of. Because I was just like, I had like just decided I was going to make slime just for fun. And then I was just like, oh, I'm just going to do this for like a year and a half.
Yeah. And I was like, I mean, initially you're having a hard time and you're like, I'm going to make slime. And then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And the whole time I was like watching it unfold, I was like, what is happening?
I know. And then it's like December 20th and I'm literally in a castle of like priority mailboxes that I have stacked up because I have made so many and shipped out so much slime and then I had a very clear moment where I was like, this has served its purpose.
Yeah. You're like, I'm done making slime.
Done.
I mean, and you like were making good money. Like, because I want to have a whole podcast dedicated to like all the weird ways people are making money today. Because it's just like, it's exploded and there's like no reason to like work at a company.
Right.
Not to get like that dramatic, but seriously. Because you were making good money doing that. Like wasn't like December, like what do you like, can you share?
I mean, I feel like I was having like $1,000 days.
$1,000 days.
In like the holiday like time, which was very stressful. Like, because I had no idea when I was going into this. I didn't know if it was just going to be a couple $100 here and there. And it just got bigger. And it got to the point where I had 2 people working for me.
Yes.
Like, and then it got like to, there was a very clear crossroads where I'm like, either I'm going to like get a building and like do the thing, you know, and like make this into something.
That's so
or
wild.
I'm just going to like let it. And I decided I was done. And a man bought my entire company, all my inventory, everything for his 15-year-old daughter because he wanted her to experience being an entrepreneur.
How much did he buy it for?
And I think he bought it. It was like $15K for
like,
my
what?
little
this is
slime
amazing.
biz, which was just like logos and like my leftover
and your
like
Instagram,
my Instagram and my website. Like,
and he bought it for her so she could have a business.
And I believe it's still running, and she's still doing it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I love this.
Which
this story
it made me
like
so happy,
makes
like,
my like heart explode because I just love first of all that you made money making slime,
right?
Because that's like ridiculous
and
hilarious,
right?
And just like what the fuck. But then like that. I just love this dad. I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, who is this guy who was like, yeah, you can like have a business. It'll be like making slime for his 15-year-old daughter.
I remember he was telling me because I was I was being a little picky. I had a bunch of people that were interested in buying it, but I was being really picky about because I wanted to feel good about who I was selling it to, right? And I remember asking him like why he wanted the company and like what his vision for it was. And his whole thing was he wanted to give his daughter an opportunity to experience being an entrepreneur and working for herself. I know, it's like a dude after your own heart. And I was just like, oh, I love this so much. And I actually feel like I sold it to him for a little bit less money than I could have gotten from other people just because I loved what he was doing with it so much.
Yeah.
And it really did, like, it served such a purpose in my life because that whole experience, I was going from pretty exclusively just teaching up until that point. That's how I made money, into like marketing and like figuring stuff out that was out of my wheelhouse. And it actually like, it gave me so much confidence around just like figuring the technology out and like doing the things, which is really uncomfortable for me, but I did it. And I didn't like, and it, I fucked up sometimes and like got things wrong, but I kept, it reminded me when you were talking earlier about how there's this thing that my girls, their school, it's like kind of a motto of theirs where they say, take risks and persevere.
Oh, I love that.
And it's been something that I have been saying to my children since they were like in kindergarten and like also saying to myself, you know, like in this whole idea of just like showing up as the best version of yourself that you can today, you know, and that might look different every day. Yeah. Because like we need people to show up. Like I need people to show up because then that'll inspire me. And it starts this whole, like, that's what like being in community is about and us like growing collectively, you know? And so, and it was like the whole slime business was just because I liked it. Like I liked making slime. It was very satisfying and fun for me. And then it turned into this whole beautiful thing that I learned so much about myself, about like practical things. And then I was done and I moved on to other things.
Yeah, that whole thing, that whole season, like just witnessing it was so funny to me. I was so like, fun. Of course you're making this like successful business out of slime. Like who are you?
Oh my gosh. So the highlight, like the pinnacle of that whole experience is I was invited by the local toy store in Asheville, Dancing Bear Toys, which is just the coolest toy store. And they invited me, they wanted me to come and have a slime event at their toy store on the weekend where I was going to make a pool of slime.
Oh my God.
This was like the most like chaotic, amazing experience of my life. I was surrounded. I mean, there had to have been there was more kids than could like actually fit in the room. Like there had to have been at any given time 30 to 50 kids, right?
Did they get in it?
Well, so they didn't get in the pool. I was trying to keep them like not their bodies going into it. I remember I was like explaining to them, I was like, we want to play with this with our hands and not like have our shoes in it, you know, because then it'll be gross. But we got a kiddie pool. I don't know how many gallons of glue I used, 10, 12 gallons of glue to make this giant purple sparkle slime. And these kids wait,
we have to put like pictures up of this somewhere.
I have pictures of this. Yeah.
We need pictures of these things.
I have these amazing
on like the website.
And these kids are just like losing their minds like about the slime. And then they started doing this they started little klepto babies, right? They just started grabbing like armfuls of slime and like
running
taking
away.
it home. Yeah. And I just was like I remember being like, okay, like you could just cradle it in your arms in the car. I didn't know, there was probably lots of parents that were like, never again after that experience.
No, that is so
But it was so much fun. And it was so much fun to experience like being so childlike and I remember I would tell, like if I had to talk to an adult about what I did during that window of time, they just didn't get it.
I barely got it.
I know. And
I was like, what the
and I was like, here's just look at my Instagram. You might get it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is cute.
And I'm trying. I remember studying like ASMR and like that whole effect of like that was super satisfying. Like, oh, where it just feels really good. But any kid or teenager that I would talk to, they were like, they knew exactly what was up and they were like so stoked about it. I still have some of my girls' friends at school will still come up to me and talk to me about slime and be like, can I have slime? Do you have slime? Because there was a whole window. I was like the slime godmother. Like everybody got slime.
I have slime?
I was
Do you
like
have
slime Oprah. Like you get a slime. You get a slime. We had like slime birthday parties. It
I
just
know,
was
sent
like
me slime.
I sent you slime.
They were like scented and stuff.
I know.
It was so funny. It was so funny.
So
and I
funny.
loved it so much. I was just like, yes.
And it was so fun to just allow myself to experience that and be done with it when I was done.
Yeah.
Like, that was really important for me. Like to not feel like I had to force myself to do something that was no longer really like bringing me the same kind of joy. I felt like I learned the things I needed to learn and I wanted to move on. And I think I agree that there's probably some people that have like a very thematic thing in their life. Like this is the thing that they're going to do and it's going to be for the long haul. And I'm really recognizing like I am not like that. Like it can be in the same realm of like creative, like, and I always have like themes of teaching, but I tend to like want to click through doing something new almost every couple years.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, although at this point I don't see myself getting sick of what I'm doing right now. But when I was starting it out, when I was copywriting, more so when I started doing Write Your Way to Freedom, I was worried that like I would become this copywriter girl and that would be the only thing.
Oh, and you were going to be boxed in.
So I was actually like real worried about that and that like reminding myself that having an exit plan and like exiting is okay. It's something I had to do constantly because that was actually probably the one thing holding me back from actually like going through with Write Your Way to Freedom was I was like, I don't know that I want to talk about marketing and copywriting for the rest of my life.
Right.
Like I don't know. I'm amazed by people who like have that one thing and do it like, especially like people who like they've got podcasts on it. They're blogging about it. They got a YouTube channel about it. It's like this very niche thing. Right. And I'm just like, oh, I don't know that I could do that.
And I think we need experts like that. Like we need those people to do those deep dives. But I think it is good to like not expect something. Don't expect something of yourself unless you've like given yourself the opportunity to look at like, what do you actually need?
Well, and I think that probably holds people back from like doing things, right? Because you're like, well, I don't know that I want to do this forever and at this level of intensity and whatever. And you don't have to. Like, I don't know. So that's like part of why I still like on my Instagram, for example, I post videos of me pole dancing because I get comments constantly that are like, wow, like this is so not professional.
You're like, cool.
And I'm like,
that's not my whole thing.
Yeah. I'm like, yep. But also I think I also get on the other like flip side of that coin, I get people who are like, you know, the fact that you post videos of you pole dancing and are still like a successful copywriter is like inspiring to me because it tells me that I don't have to just like be this one thing and like constantly talk because that would be boring for me. Like how about it would make it more likely that I would give up on copywriting sooner if I did that.
So
to myself.
Yeah, this whole idea is so fascinating, and you have embodied it so beautifully. Like being a multifaceted human.
Yes.
And not reducing yourself to a single marketable thing that you box yourself into. And you have crafted an entire career around giving yourself the flexibility to move in directions that you're feeling like excited about. And then also getting like support, people picking up stuff that you're no longer like interested in doing. Right. And you just get that support. And I think that approaching your life with that intentionality and curiosity about yourself, and not thinking, okay, well, what is just the most like profitable way to do this?
No, I could never do that. Yeah.
But looking at it like what actually like lights me up and excites me, and recognizing I'm a human and that those things might change, and I can create a really flexible, beautiful space. And you've done that so well to be able to talk
as we're talking, I'm realizing that where the self-awareness came from to do this for myself actually came from mountain biking. Because I used to mountain bike and race mountain bikes. And I remember like getting to a point where I felt like a day was like wasted if I didn't get on my bike.
Right.
And I like would feel bad. I would feel like I remember like getting in the shower, and if I wasn't like covered in mud head to toe, I was like, what's the point? Like literally my whole life was about mountain biking.
Wow.
And I also remember one of the reasons I like left Asheville, Brevard, is because I had like a moment, like an out of body moment where I was like watching myself, and I had just gotten back from a mountain bike ride, and I was at a friend's house, and there was mountain biking like video on the TV, and we were talking about mountain biking, and I was like, this can't be all I do.
Wow.
And I got rid of my mountain bike, left Asheville, like moved out of town, was like, I can't do this. Like this can't be like it. And I joke, like I ruined mountain biking for myself by just going so like balls to the wall and making it all that I did. And I just, so now like, I don't know, when people are like, oh, are you going to compete and pull? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like I don't do that to my like the things that I love anymore. I releasing myself from the pressure to be the best at it or like make it the only thing that I do. Like I just know that is like detrimental to like me loving something.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I resonate with that idea so much in a creative realm, right? Like when you put that pressure to either be profitable or the best, or like you have to be an expert or a master at this in order to even have the right to participate in it, you know? And I mean, really just like breaking down what everybody else thinks, or even what you potentially could know that you could do if you obsessed and like this is like all you did, but like what is actually good, what's actually satisfying. And I do really resonate with that.
I think there are different people. At some point I was reading this thing where it was like, it was about like eating and like dieting, I think. And it was about how some people can just like regulate or pull back on like something gradually. And some people are like all or nothing. Like they got like there's like, it was
Cold
like a
turkey.
thing talking about like the two different kinds of people. But I feel like that's an important thing to know about yourself, not just with like food. I don't even like mean it with food, but like the concept of like, are you the kind of person that like has to go completely all in or nothing? Like, are you a black and white kind of person?
Yeah.
Or are you the kind of person that like really grows and thrives when you can like kind of like ebb and flow with your energy and your desires? And I just think that the world is set up more for people who can do the like all or nothing, the like, this is my one thing. Like that's what we reward. We reward people who are like in their field of study forever. And I'm not that person. And so for me, I kind of feel like entrepreneurship was like the only option for me to like live a happy, fulfilled life. Yeah. Like actually, because I needed something that would grow with me. It was funny actually the other night when we were talking with Ben's friend about like workplace politics. And he was like, you know, I can't really say exactly what I think because if I do that, it will hurt my chances for a promotion. Right. Because it's so much about like who your connections are and your like reputation. It's like reputation. Yeah. And I was just like, that is literally why I couldn't I couldn't ever be in an office situation. Like that was so brutal for me. It was such an uncomfortable experience that felt so out of alignment with who I was, to just be constantly in a situation where I felt like I had to pretend. I was like, I can't be around these people. I have to be able to say exactly what I'm thinking or I'm literally going to die.
I mean, same. Just this whole idea of just being able to acknowledge the structures and systems that be, and that they have been crafted to reward a certain type, right? And to give yourself permission to not be in alignment with that, for that to not be something that you're wildly successful at, and to just get really curious about, where do you experience satisfaction? Is it something that you're constantly changing? You're constantly ebbing and flowing? Or do you really enjoy the deep dive and becoming an expert at any one thing? But I think it constantly is, you're cycling back to you can hear all the chatter out there of what you should or shouldn't do, and this is the right way to do this. And it's while there can be so much wisdom and insight in listening and considering, ultimately you have to turn that all inward and check in with what is satisfying to you? What version of yourself is so satisfied and blissed out and peaceful and joyful? What does that version of you look like? And how does that differ from maybe everything that you're doing, or what is presented to you, or what the expectations are on you? And just being curious, not being hard on yourself, but just get really curious. And that's a big theme of our Master Your Mindset course, is that compassionate curiosity. And honestly, you could read books all day long, listen to all the podcasts, watch all the documentaries, go to all the seminars. But the most wisdom that you will get about yourself and what your needs are from having compassionate curiosity towards yourself.
Totally.
That's where it's at. And that each one of us possesses everything we need to find that happiness. And and by tuning in to that is where you get there. And I'm definitely moving into a window where I'm there's so much shifting and changing in my life. And I actually feel really grateful to get to, put into practice a lot of these ideas in a more real way than I have, I think, in my life. And I don't know, I'm really looking forward to getting to experiment, with these things and figure out what is really satisfying for me in this window.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see it. I've been so excited for it, honestly. I know it's a really difficult kind of dark time, but I'm I know so much exciting stuff waiting on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, all the difficulties in life really are, in my experience, the catalyst for real growth and change. Because why would you change if you're comfortable? It's as simple as that. You're not going to change if you're comfortable.
Absolutely. And it honestly, I've been so aware of how comfortable I've been with things that aren't good for me. But I tend to gravitate towards those things just because they're familiar and comfortable.
Totally.
Not because
everyone does that.
Make me happy or they're good for me. And kind of really leaning into discomfort lately and trusting that through this, I'm actually going to be able to crack open into things that are genuinely
you're going to have
satisfying
deeper
and beautiful.
Insights into yourself through the discomfort. I mean, I see it all the time with my students. So often, once you are aware that you have another option outside of maybe your miserable job, for example, it's going to be a theme in what I talk about, because that's my career right now. But once you kind of are aware that you don't have to be living a certain way, it almost, you can't unsee it. And it sometimes is what creates that discomfort, is when you suddenly have a moment of awareness around how things could be different.
Yeah.
And I think that's I don't know, one of the most important things for me in my life, but also one of the most important things for what I want to provide is just a place for people to see that things can be different in your life. That's really I think what our podcast is about, is there are different ways of doing things outside of what is mainstream.
Yeah.
Not just with career stuff, but how you do life, how you do friendships, how you do relationships, how you make career choices, how you choose to raise your kids. And I think that, I don't know, it's just everything.
Yeah. It really is. And from my experience, we tend to, as humans, either repeat just like repeat loops, repeat ways of thinking, ways of being, living, belief systems, like fill in the blanks, that we just like repeat what we were taught, right? Like, and that'll happen automatically, subconsciously, for the things you're not aware of. And then say you're aware of certain things that were like bad for you. Sometimes then you can pendulate and do the opposite. Okay, well, I'm going to do the opposite then of, you know, because this was bad. You know, mom and dad.
I tend to do that.
Yeah. I had like a horrible divorce, so I'm never going to get married, or fill in the blanks of like what that would look like. And I remember becoming aware of this kind of duality of the either repeating or the pendulating. And both of them are coming from levels of like not really being consciously aware, like the
self-preservation too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But neither of them have brought these ideas fully into the light, because when you bring it into the light and you're like, wow, okay, so I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to do the opposite out of like fear of repeating that. And what is the thing I actually want to do?
Right. Because it's in the middle.
Yeah, because it's somewhere in the middle, because there's wisdom from both like sides and both ends. And this is like, I mean, this is how I parent my children, or I've been trying to, because I was so aware of like, there are things that I experienced as a child that I do not want to repeat for my kids, but I also don't want to do the opposite.
Right.
Because that I feel like could be equally as like traumatic.
Right.
And so how do I get into the present moment and like see this little human and meet their needs today outside of all these like ideas that I have around parenting? And that can apply to just like so many different things.
Do you have an example? Because I remember I've told you about this post before. I forget. I think it was in like the Wax, like the West Asheville Exchange. Remember, I was like obsessed with this post where it was like, what is one thing that your parents did when you were a child that has resulted in you like doing exactly the opposite? And the responses, I was so fascinated by them, because some of them were like kind of fucked up. Like one of them was like, one of them was a girl who was like, my dad would always have like a Sara Lee like cheesecake or something and like wouldn't share it with me as a child. And she's like, so now I just like eat Sara Lee cheesecakes
whenever I want.
Want. And I'm just like, fuck you, Dad. I can have my own cheesecake now. So it was like a lot of stuff like that where you're just like, I wish I like had saved that somewhere.
I feel like I remember one of them was like driving with the windows down and the AC on.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is when I do. I can tend to do that. Or just like leaving all the lights on in the house. Yeah. Like just turning them all on.
Just be like, take that. Take that. Take that, Dad. Or Mom, whoever it is.
Right.
Sounds like a dad one though.
That's totally a dad one. What am I, or like when you leave the door open, what am I, air conditioning the neighborhood? Or
just like
heating
all
the
that
neighborhood?
Stuff.
Yeah. And but like that whole idea to get really clear on what is like real and good and healthy and fulfilling for you. You know what I mean? For you to experience.
That's really what it all comes back to, is just listening to yourself better. The more I've done that and the more I've just like said out loud the things that I felt that like really needed to be said out loud, even though I definitely, all my self-limiting beliefs were like, make yourself smaller. Everything's just gotten so much better.
Yeah.
And that's really like why we're here today.
It really is.
Because this is like something that feels really good and right for me to do this podcast with you. And so I just, it doesn't really matter what like comes of it, you know, for me. Because I know that just sitting here intentionally with you and like hashing out things makes everything so much more like concrete, and I don't know, just makes me like a better person. And I know now from putting things like that into practice that something beautiful will come of it, whether it's a redirection or a who knows, or just a deeper friendship with you. I'll be like, I mean,
I feel so strongly about all that too. And I think that this whole shift, it seems like we're making kind of culturally away from this idea of some expert has like the secret that you need in your life in order to like actually be happy or successful or whatever. And we're moving away from that. That's like a marketing tactic, right? And we're moving into this whole idea of like really empowering people
Yes,
where they're at and giving them tools, sure, giving them practical tools to build a business or whatever. But the core of it is that you have what you need to be happy, you know, and to give yourself permission to be your own expert at your own reality.
Totally.
You're the only one that can be an expert at your life, you know? And that's what we did in Master Your Mindset. It was looping back into like, what is it for you? Like check in, be compassionately curious, like check in with what brings you satisfaction and joy. And I think that'll be a theme of this podcast. And that's really like our entire relationship has been very based on that exploration and like, what is that for us? And like, where do we want to grow and where do we have limiting beliefs? And
yeah. And if you're anything like me, where I feel like most of my life I was in subtle subconscious ways told to like not trust myself.
Yeah.
Or like that things weren't happening as I felt like they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been so much of like this process has been trusting myself and coming back to, no, I can like make good decisions for myself and things like that in small ways and big ways. But yeah, that's what I hope for everyone here. I really hope that for everyone.
That's like what I want from like every encounter that I have. I try to like point it back
we like
to
amp people up.
I want to like hype people up that you are the master of your own reality and the creator of your life. And like, you call the shots, you know, and really the only one you can bet on is yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Is that a t-shirt?
Yeah. And not from like a dark scarcity like place where I know that like some people have like parents that said like the only person you can rely on is yourself, right? You know what I mean? Like it can be that. I didn't experience that, but I've seen it. No,
I didn't either.
I've seen it in other people's like just in, you know, when talking about self-limiting beliefs and stuff, but it's not like in that sense. It's in the sense that like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Rely on people, connect with people, community is essential, but like ultimately you gotta drive the ship.
Yeah, you're the creator. I really love that. And it makes me think of the more you can validate your experience, like just be like, I'm like, it's okay, I'm a human. Like I know we've been talking a lot about like the nature of just like changing your mind and like in any situation and how that can come easier to certain people and not as easy for certain people, but just seeing yourself without judgment and validating your experience. Because I mean, I don't know if you were anything like me, there was a lot of my emotional experience as a child that was invalidated.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's what I was just like, talking about constantly.
And
like you're not. I mean, it's like a joke because I say it to Ben like automatically all the time. Yeah. Like he'll be like, I feel like I'm getting sick, and I'll be like, you're not sick. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I'm like, sorry. That's like what I was told my whole life. You're not sick. You're fine. You're fine. You're okay.
And what that creates
I think
in a child.
That's what children, like, I feel like I understand why parents do that. It's like, you're trying to reassure them, but it's like, not really
no,
like.
You're a parent and you're just trying to have like a single goddamn moment of peace.
Yeah.
And you're just like, please, for the love of God, just like give me 5 minutes in the bathroom by myself. So there's like some of that. Like, because I mean, I've experienced that. Also fear, like genuine, like I'm afraid that you're sick. Like I don't want you to be sick. So I'm going to deny that reality. But like that experience as a child, and even as much as I see how parents are, and I totally understand how exhausting it is, and our parents are trying to do their best, but it really resulted in emotionally or otherwise, even physically invalidating a child creates a tremendous amount of self-distrust.
Oh, yeah.
That we are spending probably the rest of our life trying to rebuild. And I am so determined to, as best I can, preserve that in my children.
Totally.
And like give them agency, you know what I mean?
I'm so excited for our kids.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what they like come away with, and also where they're going to be like, wow, you guys were like archaic. Like, what the fuck? Because there's going to be that. There's going to be our versions of this. 100%. Like, I'm guaranteed. Yes. I feel like I am fully aware. I'm like saving for therapy for my children now.
My kids are already in therapy.
I cannot foresee in what way they're going to look at us and be like, wow, you guys are super old school. But it's going to be fun. I'm happy to be be alive for it.
Me too. And I'm actually like genuinely excited about getting to have those conversations with my children as they get older and being able to tell them the stories of the bridges I built, you know, and how I really like, and how hard I tried to build the biggest, most beautiful bridge like to a whole new land away from like what I experienced as a child, and like how beautiful that is, and still recognizing that that's not perfect and you get to build bridges ahead of you for your kids.
That's such a beautiful image.
Yeah. And
it's
like,
a much better image than mine being like, yeah, I know I fucked you up too.
I mean, it's
time to go to therapy.
It's the one I've adopted because even in like talking with my dad, like after my mother passed and trying to understand our relationship in this new way, I've had moments of being able to express gratitude to him for the bridge he built for me. Because there's been moments where I think he's expressed like remorse around like some of the things that happened in my childhood that made it difficult, you know?
No, that's an interesting thought, because that's making me something that I've only in the last few years really like become aware of, and I'm sure I will once I have kids too, but is how I don't know anything really about my parents' childhoods. And without that information, it's hard to like remember that and have that compassion for, I'm sure, because I know a little bit that my parents built bridges for me. Like I know they did, but I don't fully know. Like I don't have a full picture. I'll never forget in the Dolly Parton podcast, Dolly Parton's America, which is just like
treasure,
so amazing. Like please, I wasn't even a Dolly Parton fan before that. I was like,
stop this podcast.
Yeah,
go listen to it.
Don't even listen to us. Go straight to Dolly Parton's America.
Yes.
But she has this like really beautiful moment where like Jad is talking about, because Dolly, do you remember this?
Yeah.
Dolly is like friends
with Jad's dad.
And he says something and she just like so beautifully and eloquently is like, you don't know your dad.
Yeah.
Like kind of like you don't know him like like any adult who's like connecting with him outside of like the father-son relationship knows him. Not like in a like you don't know him so you don't like, not in like a like
just like
the
you
most,
don't have
like,
the full picture.
Yeah, like you cannot possibly like know your father the way that like his friends and his family and his siblings like know him, because he's your father and he's like put things in place to protect you from like probably like
the messy stuff.
He's like cultivated a world for you to live in.
Yeah.
And because of that, you can't see him clearly.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
yeah.
Because I knew it, but it was something in the way that she said it that I was like, this is bigger. This is so much bigger. And immediately my like empathy and compassion for my parents just like grew like in that moment.
Yeah.
It was so wonderful.
That's so powerful. And I mean, it kind of goes back to this whole idea, this theme we've been talking about, like self-growth, right? And that being, it's so purposeful and so really so satisfying, and it makes you feel like you're really showing up and living.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I love you.
I love you.
It was fun to talk about you.
It was fun to talk
I got
about
all,
you.
like gushy.
I know.
I know. It's funny. It's funny because it made me think about how I describe you to other people. And I don't know if you've like known that, like some of the stories that I like share or whatever, and how I like how it like how the Loki's like, you're done.
We love you too, Loki.
But yeah, anyway, that was fun.
That was fun. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Okay. Bye.
The part where we figure out how to wrap up the podcast.
I like the idea of us just saying how much we love each other.
At the end,
like it's like hanging up a phone call.
Okay, I love you. I'll talk to you a little bit later.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Text me.
Text me. Memes.